You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I am here again with Paul and Anna. How are you guys doing?
I am fantastic. I just got the book Callahan's Cross Time Saloon, as well as Terry Jones's Starship Titanic in the mail, so I am just so excited to read over them.
Nice.
I'm good as well. I had the hiccups today. So
Do you still?
That was fun. No, that's the excited part.
Oh, okay.
I got nothing going on today.
So that was entirely irrelevant.
Yes.
Okay. The situation has been resolved before it could be a problem. Thank you. That's now that we're on our best behavior, joining us on the show this week is a good friend of mine, Lucas Mercer, who happens to be one of the most artistic people I know, who has his hand in everything from writing to acting to even a bit of game design. But most relevant to today's topic is that he is a musician with a lot of appreciation and inspiration for video game scores. So first of all, welcome to the show, Lucas.
Hey man, bonsoir.
How are you doing today?
I am feeling fantastic. I'm really excited. I love this topic.
So how about we start off with your musical experience? Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
I've been a musician, playing guitar since 9, seriously since 12, and in band since 14. When I was a kid, we won some city contests, best song, and things like that. I've traveled across the country to join different bands. Video game music was a huge inspiration for me to actually take music seriously and propel me in that direction, and I took that with me as I went, and in the last 15 years or so, I have started actually kind of realizing my desire to create video game music. Although I definitely have my own angle at it, if you will. I'm starting to do some game design. And my major focuses along the way have also been this band that I'm part of. I'm part of a band called Zen Junkie. I've been writing a lot of solo rock material, kind of alternative, progressive rock world, if you will, for the better part of my life. Actually, I've always been looking for players. It's just looking for the right people who are interested or able to play the stuff that I compose, because it can be a little complicated sometimes. But for the last 3 years, I've had these amazing brothers of mine making this music with me. But I've also met an incredible array of people. My friend Cameron Serafino Catalano, who mastered a lot of my albums, who I have a side project with of improvisational experimental forms. And he actually is a film composer working with a lot of companies right now, and a lot of just amazing, talented hippies. I'm on the West Coast, so I had a good friend, Sid Dell, who is one of the best drummers I've ever known in my life, who I made an acoustic thrash album with, tribal folk we call it, a few years back, Ark Island. I just have a lot of music to say. It's an embodiment. I'm not like I am really passionate, but I don't want I'd rather be than sell, you know? It's, well, so to speak, I mean verbally. I come from theater, but I mostly have been in the music community for a long time, although I play a hell of a lot of video games and have been part of online communities. Because I've always just really wanted to make games eventually, and, well, I'm doing that right now, actually. I've been doing it for the last 8 years or so, 8 years or so. But to actually realize the art of creating environments with your music, listening to music is somewhat of an act of stewing in any case. But anyone who knows what it's like to love becoming the character on the screen has a different kind of understanding of the displacement that comes along with that, and I love that, and I just want to make more of that. And as a section of my life, I'm really going to be focusing on my band in a lot of ways in the years to come. But I want to do everything, and I will. So it's just really great to be engaged with you guys. Thank you. I've been looking forward to feeling like I can be part of the gamer community and not just the music communities.
You said was your family musically inclined when you were growing up?
No, but Well, my mother was. She actually was on albums with a church group when I was really young. Yeah, my family went through a lot of religious changes, affiliations, if you will. But nothing really that much other than my dad is buying me a guitar. But the thing, like growing up in the 90s, I imagine it's kind of like growing up in the 70s in a way, or even the 80s, where when music starts to really grasp the attention of the kids, they all get together and it's just like, we are making this happen. And maybe it's just the sensibility I had from it. But when I really learned music, there was a lot of we. There's a lot of us. I've become very independent in my directions, but also the reason I have this band is so that I have people to share with, to create with. Like I'm making a lot of stuff on my own anyway, but I've become more independent is what I'm kind of saying. But back then it was all community and challenging each other to learning instruments. I'm sure like Paul's probably had a similar experience. Having peers who just like you pass back and forth what you can do with the instrument now, and it's just I think there's a community like that. It's almost like an ecosystem.
Yeah, well put. No, sometimes it feels like the only real magic in the world is that just that unexplainable feeling of going back and forth. Musically speaking with other musicians and such, there's something about it. And you mentioned a few moments ago regarding music in games that struck a chord with me, and it kind of begs a question for all three of you. Is you had alluded to, when there's music in a game that, in my own words, just interpreting what you said, because I forgot your direct quote, but it was basically like when the game's music is a character in of itself, a landscape and things like that. So I was kind of wondering, maybe go around past the mic kind of thing, and if you guys could list off any games that you felt that the music was so much a part of the game that it felt like a character in the game.
Oh man, done.
Well, for me, right away, I got to jump in with, and I'm not surprised if a lot of other people out there that are listening would have the same answer, but the music in Quest for Glory 4 pops into my head more than the music from any other game.
That was probably my first choice as well.
That's why I had to jump in there quickly, you see.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's why I kind of left it for others to pick first, because I knew that would be very good chance of that being the first one to be named.
Exactly. And even just, the Leshy music, that is in my head more than any other music. And then just the little hello and like the little sound bites that go with it. It all goes together so well.
It's definitely like, it's a marked difference. Like, I mean, the amount of setting that is just boldly established by those first chords when you open the game, it's very deliberate and jarring, and that's just like your introduction to the land. It's a good choice.
Well, the sound at the beginning of it also strikes a little bit of anticipation and fear in my heart, because for the longest time, the game would crash with the error right after I'd start playing, and I'd slide down by the goo. So I'd keep restarting it to try to get it to work over and over. So all I'd hear is the little beginning intro. So I'm like, I love it, but at the same time, I'm like, I want more.
It's like it was designed to drive you mad. Now you know what it's like to live in this land.
Yeah, Aubrey Hodges he's quite brilliant. I think his magnum opus was Quest for Glory 4. I mean, I'm not familiar with his work. I know he worked on like ports of Doom and a lot of popular titles for like consoles, but from what I know of his work, Quest for Glory 4 was the best. But I also loved his work in bloody Conquest of the Longbow. That was also him. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's another really good one to bring up. Yeah.
I played that a very long time ago, and so long ago, in fact, that I did not have a sound card, so I absolutely have no idea what you're talking about.
I didn't know until later either.
I didn't know that was him.
Just imagine lutes and pan flutes, and you get it. You get it.
It's really good. Yeah.
The Kevin Costner kind of stuff, it's great. But my actual, why did I say Kevin Costner? He was a Robin Hood. That fits.
Prince
that
of
works.
Thieves,
That's part of my brain that done that.
I heard it.
There we go. My actual pick for part of a music that feels like a character would be Gabriel Knight 1.
Oh yeah,
absolutely love the ambiance of the pianos and there's a lot of strategic quiet in that game. Not really musically, but just in the game. It lets you breathe and lets you think, and that piano feels like just a companion. It almost feels it's the Cedric to Gabriel. Music is your Cedric. It's there to keep you company, and it does a much better job than Cedric, in my opinion. No, Cedric's lovely without the voice.
I'd agree with that because so much of it is also New Orleans, and it aligns with that localization so brilliantly. Yeah, it was a really great soundtrack. I think I include one of the songs from it. I just made a 143 song playlist for this conversation. I think I may release with the interview if you'll allow me. Mm-hmm. But because I think I may refer to it here and there, I just made it. He does similar. Robert Holmes does a similar thing in Grey Matter, I feel too, and works with their daughter as well. But he is really good at having that be that extra character. This is funny because that question led me very quickly to like my favorite soundtrack, just instantly. And I think, you're talking about Quest for Glory 4, like those are some of your absolute favorite games. The question naturally really brings you quickly to your favorite games, and I think that says something about the success of music when it really brings out character. But I talk about this all the time. I'll try not to spend too much time on it to eat our time up, but Final Fantasy VI is an incredible version of that because it is also an incredibly successful exploration of character in music. I recently have been obsessed with this movie, Once Upon a Time in the West. It's on Netflix. Go see it if you want to see cinema music done exquisitely. If you just want to kick back and be worked over by art. I'm really of the opinion now that Nobuo Uematsu, the composer for Final Fantasy, is the Ennio Morricone of video games, and Final Fantasy VI specifically draws to almost that specific film in a profound way. When you give a video game character a theme song, there's a different kind of reality that takes on than just watching movies. When you're watching a movie, you have that 2 hour window, maybe 2 to 3 hour window. Once Upon a Time in the West, for example, is an incredible example. Probably the best I've ever seen in a movie, other than maybe Star Wars. Maybe like they're on a similar level, honestly, where you have 4 main characters and they have very drawn out character themes, leitmotifs, that interact with each other. The music will interact with each other as the characters interact with each other, and it's breathtaking, technically, conceptually, in the writing. When you look up the credits of who really envisioned the film, it makes sense. But then Final Fantasy VI, the game in which they very decidedly went with the idea that every character can be the main character, even if there's a few that really aren't fleshed out too much, but that whole they're going at that angle, and the importance of character theme songs really comes to life there, and it's almost like the game is a Western. It gets a lot of attention as a steampunk game, and it is, but I've come to discover after watching those movies and seeing how the similarities, like people forget to point out that it's also kind of a Western, like it's a steampunk Western, and the emotionality of the themes that it works in a really similar way to the structure that I was seeing with Ennio Morricone in the Sergio Leone films, except it has this crazy, by way of David Bowie, JRPG explosion into another realm of that kind of mentality. And there's so much more I can get into the creation of the sound chip in order to create the soundtrack, like the creation of MIDI tones where you would hear a plinking like Wild West piano, one of those old stand-up ones, or a particular tone, so it really sounds like there's a stand-up bass, creating these localizations and things like that. So in a similar way to like Robert Holmes in New Orleans, localizations programmed into the hardware. They made for that game in Chrono Trigger. They played with inventing new sound designs and MIDI libraries, I believe. And but the amount of character presence that gives it in the actual, I mean, I kind of play it to like play a living opera, really. I mean, I really do play it so my heart soars when the music is playing. The mechanics are great. There's some in the SNES cartridge that I have. There's some bugs that I can never fix. there's no evade. I can't evade apparently. But it's worth it for the incredible feeling of characterization and to take it further. That's such a huge value for me in video games. When the characterization is that immense and the music is reinforcing it, you just kind of get into this frame where we're characters and life's a song and this is how we can see things, and it's just lovely. I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is absolutely a character, but it's not just a character in the game, it's a character in the pantheon, if you ask me. But I'm passionate about it, so.
You kind of sold me on maybe playing that game, and that would say a lot. I haven't mucked around with anything non-adventure or on a console in years.
Ooh, that would be fun, and we could do an episode about it.
Sure, I would still break it down. I get really analytical about that game. And here is a good point for me to mention that on the playlist that I've prepared, I have quite a large cross-section of Nobuo Uematsu with his pal Mitsuda, and that includes
the piano versions. That's amazing. That is good.
Oh, there's a lot of really good stuff out, piano versions. I haven't included too much myself, but Mitsuda uses a lot of piano and stuff, and there is a Mitsuda song that some people might not know from some of his other work too. He's one of the loved composers from that period of time. But, I relinquish the question.
Well, like I said, Quest for Glory 4, I knew was going to be chosen before me. But that would be my best answer. But I kind of feel like I want to bring something else to the table and try to avoid Sierra games just because they're just so easy to pick. And our audience, they know that we just everything Sierra is pretty awesome.
I actually included very few Sierra games on my playlist because I know how much people know it already.
Yeah, that's actually my only one Sierra game on my whole list this time. So
nice.
I guess with mine, I don't know if I'd really describe it as so much as being a character. So I'm not sure if it's really relevant to this part of the conversation. Since I was fully expecting that this was going to be Paul's answer, I guess I might as well answer this one for him. But the theme to Police Quest 2,
nice,
which I'm really, really quite stunned that you did not choose that one, Paul. But yeah, no, it was again, Police Quest 2 is a game that I've always played on the PC speaker anytime that I played it until very recently, and you take a theme like that and you reduce it to the beeps of a PC speaker, you're losing like a lot. Like not even just like the usual drop down. I just mean like you're not going to capture any of it. So when people were saying like, oh, the Police Quest 2 theme is so great, I'm like, it's all right, it's cool, whatever. There are other great themes that I heard through PC speaker that I thought were great, like Heroes Quest 1 or Space Quest series. They're all great even on a PC speaker, even though they're way better on a sound card. But when you hear Police Quest 2 finally on a sound card, you're like, oh, that is pretty cool. And then you hear it on the Roland, and then it's just like, dear God, like, what the hell is this theme? This is amazing.
It adds a whole nother level. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. And then just everything, like, I just see the game in a new light because it just sets the tone. It just, like, it really just reshapes the whole experience.
It's like digitally remastered in Dolby Atmos.
I might argue, too, that the opening, the character select for Quest for Glory 1 is like the definitive PC speaker piece. It's absolutely realized in that form.
Well, this kind of brings me to the next kind of topic I wanted to discuss, which was just isolating intros alone, like just I guess you could say intros and or main themes, and for me there's two kind of, unless I'm sure I'm overseeing something, but to me there's two clear winners, and that would be Police Quest 2, which is just the epitome
so
of.
You were saving it up for this one, is that?
No, actually, to be honest, it was in the lot, but yeah, it was going to come up. It was inevitable. It's one of my ringtones. It just captures the 80s so well. The Police Quest 2 one. But the other one for me is just all-time favorite intros and themes to get that kind of going is Space Quest 3. That's one of those, especially through the Roland or how it was meant to be heard. Let's say it's just forever catchy. I mean, when I have writer's block, where I just pick up a guitar to just doodle, I always end up kind of at some point playing that. There's just something about that. It's just magical.
It immediately leaps to mind. I'd rather talk about this game later, but the first Streets of Rage, you're talking about the 80s Streets, the intro is immaculate. The music is just amazing. But also Loom, it's Tchaikovsky, redone by, Paul, I'm blanking on the guy's name. Do you know the guy's name? Who does Loom?
No.
I was trying to find it before I could not find it. He's a really well-known guy, but he goes by a moniker. But he transcribed Tchaikovsky into the PC format, and it's uniquely impressive. I find just transporting, if you will.
I really like the just the very beginning intro, the music you get on the PC speakers when you play Thexter. It is catchy, but it's like also like haunting. And it brings you into the game. Like, it's not like ultra, like, shoot 'em up, like Galaga kind of a sound. It's just like mysterious and musical. It's a nice intro. I like that one. It really intrigues me when I listen to it.
I feel bad because if you're, the second thing you talk about, Paul, is the intro, and that just brings me back around again to Quest for Glory 4.
You guys are going to love this playlist.
Well, even
Holy
King's
worlds.
Quest 4 has a great intro to it as soon as it comes on and you hear it. And like I said, my memories are mostly coming from the PC version, but I recently listened to it on Roland, and wow, am I even playing the same game?
You know what? I'm going to cheat here just because I've never actually played this game. But if we're talking about intro themes, we have to mention the fact that Civilization 4 won a Grammy or something like that. Like, it
Baba
actually,
Yetu.
Yeah.
This will be the one category where you don't have to have played it, right? Because you don't have to play it to get to the intro bit. So it's
You've probably still heard it. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. I had to look it up once I found out, and it is fantastic. It's amazing.
It's pretty remarkable. Concept, the arrangement of it itself is pretty remarkable. Yeah, it's nuts. And I have to agree with King's Quest 4. I'd say that's arguably the most successful theme introduction of the whole series. Like, there's a lot of music in other games, but I mean, even King's Quest 5, a game whose music I love, I think some of the intro music is not as good as the later music, whereas King's Quest 4 really brings you in a really enchanting way. I think it's probably like of original music, it's probably the most successful. The first King's Quest, you just can't forget Green Sleeves. I mean, I don't know. That's not even a classic song as far as I know. It's just King's Quest.
Yeah, that's right.
Excuse me. And that's a unique example of classic gaming, basically co-opting the memory of a traditional standard.
Well, all of the
awesome.
Civilization, Civilization 3, I don't think it won anything in particular for its music, but being that it's the music I hear the most in this house outside of the Minecraft music, I absolutely love it. And every time you get to a different era, you get some different music, so it's not always repeating itself.
Cool.
This isn't actually all that serious, but just in case anybody should happen to know, just if I can get a chuckle out of people listening to this, I'm just going to say the main menu music for WWF No Mercy on N64. It's one of those things where it's just a joke in and of itself. So if anyone is listening to this who has played that game, they are probably already laughing, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Respect.
one of those seeds planted. You only need one person, and it'll have been worth it to have mentioned it.
Yeah, exactly. Someone is going to, out of like the 100 people or so that listen to this regularly, one person will be like, "Ha!" And that's it. I'm done. That was worth the 3 minutes I spent wasting on mentioning this one.
And speaking of original songs that were composed, Al Lowe and the original Leisure Suit Larry theme.
Oh, God,
I mean, just your basic do 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 do. I mean, it's great. It's in my head. Hell, I've even put lyrics to it. So I think it's a totally fun song.
Oh, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect, and perfectly within the means of the PC speaker, like we were saying.
You know, it's funny, with the exception of Monkey Island's like totally immortal theme, Sierra really had a monopoly on the art of recognizable theme across all their Quest enterprises. That's pretty impressive. Like,
yeah, they had like series themes. Like you hum the Quest for Glory theme, and you know that's Quest for Glory, right? Yeah. And then the Space Quest theme, you can hum a little bit of that, and that's the Space Quest song, right?
Yeah.
And yet everyone will think of Space Quest 3 in the beginning as well.
Exactly.
That's right.
I'm always surprised when people don't know it. I'm humming it away, and they're like, "Oh, what is it?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just from Quest for Glory." They're like, "I've never heard that before." I'm like, "Really?" Because I've known that practically my whole life. I don't see how that's possible.
Yeah, no, it's one day recently, my 5-year-old was walking around humming Space Quest 3, and I was just like, "Good, you are ready to go to university. I'm done here.
My job is done."
Very nice, very nice.
Gonna leave the nest.
Now get out.
Spread the good word. Go knock on doors.
I will add as well that kind of touching back into my conversation of Nobuyo Matsu, he's also a great theme master, although I mean, the Final Fantasy theme is totally ubiquitous, but to avoid jumping just straight into the same territory, I would recommend anyone who likes his work and hasn't heard the themes from Lost Odyssey. That is another more modern and remarkable version of picking a strong melody and having that be just instantly associated with the world you're being sucked into and the feelings that come along with it. Like that's... just another example of how he's good at doing that kind of thing too. Right.
I've not heard it, I've not played it, but I was working at EB Games when Lost Odyssey came out, so I know a bit about the hype behind it. So I'm actually, just on that alone, I'm actually really happy to hear that name again, because I just haven't heard that in like probably about 10 years.
I'll link you up to the opening music. It is breathtaking. Like he's the kind, he works on another level in the industry for sure. It's sad to see him paring down, but I guess I understand.
Yeah.
He's done a lot with his life.
I got kind of a different. I wanted to take like a different approach on the I think it was the first question, which was like a music that feels like a character in a game. How about instead of being that prominent, I guess you could say, what stands out to you a lot as music that doesn't stand out as a character? It's not maybe that loud in personality. It just really enhances the immersion for the game.
Well, I mean, that's actually, I think this qualifies, but I was probably the first thing that jumped into my head were two games. The one being more familiar to everyone is Shadow of the Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
and that is just fantastic. I don't know how many of you guys played. I hear
that's a great game. I have that one on the PlayStation.
Yeah,
I like that company, the remake company Blue Point. Demon Souls. I'll just say it, and we can move on. It's coming out soon. Oh my god, I can't wait.
But it's just fantastic because it just knows the. I guess my theme for the picks that I have is a sort of. Games that can almost manipulate the player, or at least manipulate me, because they just know how to use it so well. So, Shadow of the Colossus is so quiet and so barren and just like no music for so long until you get to one of the Colossi. And then like the music hits just like build up the anticipation of squaring off against this giant thing. And then once you latch on and climb onto them, then it just like picks up into like that adventure score, and it's just you're in, and it's like it won't let you go, and you're just like I that's like a game where I'm bodily just shifting back and forth, like flinging myself from side to side because I'm just so into trying to hang on to these things to take them down. You know,
it's a great game. It's like it's such a great combination of puzzle and fighting games. You know, you really have to think about it. You have to plan your moves. You can't just like go in there and take them on, and the music just pulls you right in. You are so right there.
And the other one I just want to mention real quick is in terms of just being so, allowing myself to be so controlled by the music is I guess for the whole series, but more particularly so for me, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Trials and Tribulations. It might have to do with the fact that that's the first one in the series that I played, even though it's the third game. But just the music in that is just, you know, the character themes, the dramatic themes, everything just, the game tells me what I need to be thinking or feeling at any moment, and I take it hook, line, and sinker every time.
Right.
Well, it's funny. You'd mention a game where it kind of brings you in, but the music's not always as present until you're, actually on the Colossus. My son Alex and I were talking about the game Outer Wilds. It's a game where you're kind of stuck in a 22-minute time loop, and the music isn't really there until you're accomplishing something or doing something, and it just kind of sets that ambiance for the scene and makes it that much more intense. And the small amount of music that there is even more powerful because it's not always there. So I really like how it uses it that way.
Right. Yeah. Breathing space can be really important to immersion. That's a good example of that. Yeah.
I've heard great things about that game. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, the absence of music or even sound or selective. That's cool.
I would say, yeah, I guess for my pick for just enhancing immersion kind of alone would be one we've mentioned already, which is King's Quest IV. And if I was suspiciously quiet when that was being mentioned, this is why. So I was like, I just want to hold my thoughts on that.
Gotcha.
But I just recently really played that game very, very recently, and making my way through the King's Quest series, and I was just blown away hearing it on the MT, and it was, I don't know if it was a combination. I know the music was great, don't get me wrong, but I do think it helped that I expected very little of that game, because I did not bloody like the first 3 King's Quest games. I just got through them. It was just like chewing gristle because you need the protein. I just bloody got through them. So I have to make it very clear that I was enamored by the 4th, 5th, and 6th one.
You're right. That's what's best. Is you're right. The music is sparse in the 4th one, but it makes room for when it arrives to like really impact.
Yeah, good way to put it. Yeah, definitely, and it really enhances the creepiness that game has. That game had a shocking amount of depth to it. I was not prepared for. Especially coming off the first 3 games and really just early AGI games. The depth of that game was really cool, and I was not aware that it took a creepy direction with the sun setting and zombies. I wasn't aware of all that. It wasn't spoiled for me again somehow. No. But yeah, the music it was just phenomenal. And I know they tried really hard with that, because I think that was the first, I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that was the first game to have sound card support. And they really wanted to show off the MT32 and things like this. So yeah, I could be wrong. I feel pretty confident about it. I'm going to give myself 70% chance I'm right.
Yeah, it was the first PC game to support a sound card. Yeah, we read about that in the Sean Mills book, I believe. They mentioned something about that.
Right, yeah.
Beautiful, okay. Yeah, so it makes sense they tried really hard, and I think the composer they hired had worked in Hollywood and such. I mean, none of that really matters, just because it doesn't... In any of the other games we're talking about musically, the credentials behind it don't matter. So it's not affecting my choice, in other words. It was just the immersion and the experience behind it. And if I had to mention another one, I was tempted to put this one for the music that feels like a character in the game, but really I would just say for immersion in general, I would go with the Neverhood.
Oh, yeah.
It's just awesome. It is completely bonkers. Terry Scott Taylor, I believe his name is.
I would actually even, sorry to cut you off, I'd actually even say it's not even an immersive experience for me, the music in that game. It's actually the opposite, but to awesome effect. Like that, the music in that game lets me know it's there, and lets me know it's weird, and lets me know that like nothing is really normal in this world.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. Right, because it's not nudging you gently into the direction it wants you to feel. It is belting it at you. Hey, you know, you should feel ridiculous right now, or whatever the case is. That's usually the case. But yeah, it's just awesome, and it's also one of the few soundtracks that I can listen to without the game, because and that's a lot of that's personal. Like I work with soundtrack music and stuff like that. So a lot of times when I'm listening to music, I don't prefer instrumentals. I kind of need a break from all that. So I think it says even more for me to be like, you know, that's a composition or a score or whatever that I can listen to like freely without the game being played. It's just that kind of fun and whimsical and ridiculous.
Crazy.
And it would only work in the neighborhood. There is no other game that music would fit into at all.
That's neat. Maybe by way of its like intoxicating nature, like in terms of aesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah,
it definitely fits the aesthetic. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. So I have a couple games in mind. I think PC is a really good response to this question because of. I mean, there's such a style to a lot of console gaming. It's just kind of, you're cool and you're awesome and you're rocking along. You got a soundtrack going on. But a lot of PC games seem to go for more incidental music. I think Sierra is a great example of that, where they just have little pieces of music to push you along here and there. But a couple games that nailed musical immersion. I was going back, going way back to when you first played Wolfenstein 3D, and you've never played a first-person shooter like this before, and someone shows you that there's a secret level at the end of the first level, and you look around, you find a few extra lives, you go into the elevator, and you're in this other world all of a sudden, this weird purple world, and this creepy, tiptoeing, hiding around every corner song guides you through this secret level. It's just a really, I think, interesting example of that, and I think id Software did something similar too in Doom, the first Doom, before anyone had played even the second or third chapter. When you get to the last boss, you're having this Doom experience. Oh my God! Like everything looks so real, and you're mowing through all these demons, and you get to the last boss, and the music, which normally has been just foot to the pedal, rock and roll. Some of the best like rock emulation in video game history. All of a sudden, you get to the last level and it slows down, and it almost stops, and you just hear and these slow synth swells come in, and a very quiet like melody eventually kicks in. That's kind of on the edge of despair, and I mean, you like. That immersion, it's one of the most real final bosses I feel like I ever had of an experience as a kid. Like you meet that pink demon who later on is just an incidental character, but the first time you meet him, the presentation just like puts you at his altar and it puts you in a supine position to be like, get ready. It was a fascinating example back in the day of how the suspension of disbelief with the materials are given just brought you to another dimension of hell. And I also want to mention, I don't want to take too much time, but because really relevant to this topic are games where the music changes as you're playing. Spore was a really big proponent of that. Brian Eno himself actually made the soundtrack for that. I think a lot of people haven't played I never did myself, but it made history for that in one way. But a game that did that years before, which is it's hard to appreciate, but it's very underrated, is Phantasy Star 3. A lot of people don't know this because they didn't play the game long enough, and I don't always blame them for that. But there's a lot of building structures in the music. When you first step out onto the world map, there's a melody that plays, an overworld theme. The more characters you get in your party, it'll add another instrument. to the overworld theme. You get a third character, another instrument is added. When you have eventually you have a full party of 5 members, and there's this huge, once the 5th party member joins, the drums start, and you're marching forward. And they also, in the battles, depending on how you're doing, the music will change. It's pretty jarring music for some people. It's the original Genesis sound chip, which I'd love to talk about later, but if there's time. But it's just interesting examples of composers actually trying to have the game respond to your state to bring you in. It's different stuff.
That is fascinating. I really want that to be more of a thing.
Yeah, it's neat, hey?
Like, yeah, not necessarily that particular thing, but just like for people to really just use the medium to affect to that extent, right?
Well, then you go into a game like Crypt of the Necrodancer. And, I mean, the whole game is based on the beats of the music. I don't know if any of you guys have played it, but the music from that game, even if you don't play it, is just some of the catchiest, best music out there.
That's interesting.
And, I mean, that's an entirely rhythm-based game. So, if you haven't played it, even just go on YouTube and check out a video, because it is damn catchy.
Yeah, definitely will.
I'm just so charmed by Curse of the Necrodancer. Being incredibly catchy. It's just like Skeletor running a dance party.
Well, it's Crypt of the
awesome.
Necrodancer.
Oh yeah, Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Yeah, it's really good. I almost wonder if the music when I'm playing a game like Hollow Knight, it almost seems like the music is responding to everything that I do. It pulls me right into the game. It feels so immersive. Christopher Larkin just does some amazing work with music. He's just so good.
Mm-hmm. Can we gush about Hollow Knight for 5 seconds?
It's such a good game.
It's a miracle, right? It's just Isn't so good. Anyway, there, I'm happy.
I am going to have to buy that because I just hear only the best things. Like every time I hear about that game, I hear better and better things about it. So
yeah, once you get I mean, it's not one of those games that as a casual gamer you can just jump in and be pretty good at. It's got a lot of depth. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of technique and memorization, and the music, like I said, it draws you all in it. It's really all consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Going way back to, I think, like the first question we asked about the music being a character, or at least the setting, at the very least, music being like an integral part of the setting. I just have to throw this out there, but Phantasy Star 2.
Oh yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah,
I put a couple tracks from that on the first 2 pieces of music you hear in that game are some of the finest examples of original Genesis sound chip you can find.
Yeah.
They're incredibly evocative. I love those pieces of music.
Yeah. And and it's one of the early JRPGs, so it's there's a lot of game design theory that they didn't benefit from knowing before then. But it's just still so dear in my heart, even if I try to play it now, and it's a bit of a slog. It's flawed when you try to play it 30, 40 years later, or however long it's been.
Yeah. It's more dated than Sierra games.
Yeah. But just the music is what got me in the first place, and then it's what gets me back in. It's sort of like they nailed it so much, and just the music alone makes me just want to live in that world, which is saying something because that's a horrible world to live in. But
well, that's what Sega was really good at. I mean, even Sonic the Hedgehog 1, the music gets stuck in my head all the time. Woo! They had such a way with music that nobody else really did at the time, in that certain style of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a greatest hits game right there.
Yeah.
I just would like to steal a comment really quick before we move away from Phantasy Star 2, and just they have a whole legacy of great music in that series. The 4th one is probably among the top 5 16-bit soundtracks ever made.
Wow.
I will stand by that. The music in Phantasy Star 4 is a total like cultural moment in my opinion. But like Final Fantasy 6, but in a completely different way. But anyhow, Sonic is a whole wing of this conversation. I have a bunch of sections dedicated to him in the playlist, and a lot of conversations.
Well, since we're kind of close enough to it, you mentioned earlier that you were looking forward to speaking a little bit about the chip that Sega used, and I'm really curious what you have to say.
All right. Well, the Sega Genesis is one of my absolute favorite systems for music. I know there's a lot of people who grew up with Super Nintendo who had a lot of disdain for the Sega chip, but like when they originally created it, they were real artisans putting attention into it. They had a real direction going, and it's weird to note that Sega Genesis has at least 2 really different periods of time with their music because of a change in sound chips that occurred. The original stuff you'll find like Phantasy Star 2 and 3 are great examples of that. Another really well-known one, and completely different than Phantasy Stars, Toe Jam and Earl. And you take it further and you've got Echo of the Dolphin. These crazy soundtracks. Echo the Dolphin is a great example of, I saw that there's lists that are rating it as the greatest 16-bit soundtrack ever made. I take issue with that, but it's impressive to think people do that. And it has something to do with the fact that the sound chip itself, they took a real chance with the sound they were going for. And it embedded in that is this kind of like future of the past. It's a weird sounding sound chip, and it leads into its machinery noises. It makes a lot of really strange tones, and there was this weird esoteric vibe to it that it was uniquely Japanese, but also technological, like tech culture, a little rebellious even before Sonic the Hedgehog. But like there's stuff like this. Castle of Illusions got a great sound from it, and one of my favorite games, one that is to refer to for the sound chip, one that isn't discussed, I think, as much as it should be in terms of classic gaming for consoles, is a game called The Immortal. And back in the day, the music for that was something kids talked about, and I don't hear people talking about it very much. But the original theme song, it's the first song on the playlist that I've got, is a really haunting little number, and it's a really unique, really weird little game. It was on Nintendo and Sega Genesis, very different versions, different soundtracks. And some songs are actually better on the Nintendo, but that's because Nintendo has one of the greatest sound chips of all time. But that early period was just so weird. It was so weird, once Super Nintendo came out, the game really changed, and Sonic the Hedgehog almost seemed to usher in the new age of the coming up sound chip. I don't know the exact dates about it, but once he started like streamlining the console into this other image of just like hipness, coolness, and rebellion, and it just became a little bit cooler, not so brazenly weird, which I love about the early Sega Genesis material. Then you started getting into stuff like Streets of Rage, which took game soundtrack mentality to a whole other level. Where you get into stuff like Streets of Rage 2, a soundtrack that's pretty well known in the game community. But if you really listen to it, there's things you try to wrap your head around them, and it's like no human could possibly play this, and we're entering a realm of composition that is completely unique to the video game experience. And the kind of expressions that we're getting in there, it starts to talk kind of a different language once you get there. Streets of Rage was a really big proponent in that, getting like that kind of thing across. Although it was following Nintendo, the capabilities set there. Like, a lot of people know the Silver Surfer soundtrack for Nintendo. If you don't give it a listen, you'll sit there and be like, what the hell is this? How can people make this? Like, it's so good. Like, it's just wild. And I think Streets of Rage took that off. I included a bunch of Shining Force games. They did really good with the, they're very fine soundtracks. They're less serious in tone than the Final Fantasy ones. They're quite bright, very anime. Not in music, but just in art direction. But the actual quality of the instruments they use and the care of the composition, great stuff. Phantasy Star 4. And then Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, was this. It is a whole like movement of itself for video game music library. I think a lot of people know that Michael Jackson helped work on the third one.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
No,
yeah,
neither.
It was kind of an industry secret. It's possible that it hasn't been confirmed, but people talk about it like it's been confirmed. They really speak about it quite directly. I've included. There's one song, Mystic Cave Zone, that I've included, that you can hear it. You can hear his sensibilities instantly. Right. It's a really, really cool vibe. And so, yeah, Sonic was attracting that kind of perspective with the sound chips. And And honestly, I love just the sound chips so much. I've also included in the list, there's a couple translations of Super Nintendo music that has been run through the Sega Genesis sound chip that are so beautiful. The Sticker Brush Symphony from Donkey Kong Country. That's an example of a classic, like a well-ingratiated classic into a classic gaming mentality that I think is actually better in the Genesis sound chip, the version that I've got. There's also a version of Shala's song by Chrono Trigger. That's just amazing. It's really translating them across the different sound chips is a really good way to get a picture of how different the compositional mentalities were between systems. I've only kind of sort of begun to glean it while listening to these translations, so I can't say too much more about it. But to wrap up this topic, there is also, some people may not be aware of, there's a song from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that was included in the cartridge but was not put in any levels. And it's called Hidden Palace Zone, very appropriately. And I got that on the playlist, but you can just look it up yourself too, and it's a great tune. And it just was never, anyone who played the game never heard it. But yeah, I love that freaking sound chip.
Well, you mentioned Echo the Dolphin. You know, there's something about that game. It's the loneliness of the sound and the way, I know it's in the title, but the way it echoes it back. Like when you're sending your beam out and it's coming back and you're hearing it go through the water, you know, like it's really like no other game. And it had to have been that good because the game is so bloody hard to figure out that you need to have good music and ambiance to keep you going.
But I think you would know right off the bat then that like the weird alien character of the game that comes out of Echo, like at first, you know, it's about psychic dolphins or whatever. I mean, whatever the way they speak. But then you get into these really weird places, and it gets colder and it gets more alien. Exactly. And that original sound chip, I'm pretty sure. Like I hear the sounds, and I'm really confident that was that original chip. If I'm wrong, oh well. But it's still a Sega Genesis chip. The weirdness of the aesthetic that they decided to go with, I almost suspicious that made them think of going weird with the game. Like this is where we could go with it. But yeah, it is a great example of a strange decision in sound hardware creating an environmental experience that is haunting, just unforgettable. And also in line with its theme of sonar. Like, there's just so much interesting about that game, really. Conceptually. Yeah, thank you for letting me indulge in the sound chip discussion. I've also got interesting discussion about the CD-ROM era, but we can do that another day if we have to.
We will absolutely love to do that one of these days. But is there anything else before we start wrapping this up from anyone?
Shout out to Tetris and Commander Keen 4 for both of them keeping songs in my head over the years.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's a good one. Fester's World of Wonders in Space Quest 3 is just ridiculous and great. And Thimbleweed Park, that's an amazing one. It's just like a guy and his Gretsch hollow body kind of vibe, like I don't know, noir surf. I don't really know how to pin it, but cool. it fits it perfectly.
Oh, and the Astro Chicken music, I have to say that too.
You can't forget that stuff.
Yeah. I guess if there's one that needs to be mentioned that hasn't been mentioned yet, the moon theme from DuckTales NES.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
Oh man,
that's good.
That's definitely one of those songs that punched way above its weight class for the NES.
Yeah, I gotta look that up. I'm more familiar with Quackshot, and it's a surprise. It's a great game. Really underrated game. As far as Disney merchandise goes.
Right.
But Disney made great games in the 90s. Anyway, early 90s.
My son loves the crazy piano mix version. Like they do them for all sorts, so they go faster and faster and faster until it gets almost impossible, and you don't even know how they're playing it. But they have that one for the moon theme. So good.
All right, so just as we wrap this up, Lucas, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
If you have any plugs or shout outs that you would like to give, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. First, my band is called Zen Junkie. You can find us anywhere you find music. We're on iTunes, Spotify, etc. If you want to hear my more video game and fantasy related music, I've got an album called Half Elf. I usually advertise on the Classic Gamers Guild. I have a different approach to creating video game music I really like. But other than that, for your own benefits, there's a band called The Runaway Four. They have no idea that I'm pimping their product here. If you like video game cover bands, you could do yourself a favor to look into what they do. And another person who has no idea, I'm sending people to look at our work. If you like the Nobuo Uematsu music, especially Final Fantasy VI that I referenced before, there's a woman named Aiko Ishiwata of Studio Ishiwata who has done, in my opinion, the best acoustic recreations of the basic themes, short of Uematsu actually performing them live in orchestras. It's just kind of like homemade iterations of them. Those are really good, and she's trying to become a game developer, and just blindly, as someone who is making games right now, I just want to, throw love towards people who are even doing it, even if I don't even know them really. It's just like a vibe in the industry I'd like to encourage. So, but yeah, check out our tunes, man. We kick ass.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. I have
shameless self-promotion.
I can definitely attest to that, having bought several of your albums off of Bandcamp.
Thank you.
And I would like to actually burn them onto a CD so I can play them in a proper CD player. But right now, we'll definitely get me through the workday as we get through the work from home stages.
Awesome. I'll also like to speak highly of Paul Kodman. I've listened to your stuff a while ago, and I was listening to it again last night. And you're a very capable engineer. There's a lot of stuff I don't know how I would actually start to make that.
Oh, thank you so much, man. That means a lot.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of really cool stuff, and I actually relate to some of the creative impulses. By which I think something we share in common is a love of a good pitch shifter on a guitar.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, I lean heavily on that.
Well, it's really nice to use when you find the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, thank you all very much for joining us again this week. For those of you who want to join the conversation, you can write us at mail@classicgamersguild.com. We are also on Facebook. We're primarily on Facebook, really. We have a page and a group. Come look us up at the Classic Gamers Guild. We are on Twitter at the CG Guild. We are on Instagram at CGG Podcast. And you can find us on Patreon if you'd like to support the show. We'd like to first and foremost thank all of our Patreon supporters, especially to those in the extra special thanks tier, namely Mark Fillion and Jay Holmes. Thank you so much for your contributions. Actually, speaking of which, since we're on the topic of music, Paul, who actually wrote the intro theme for this very show, we never really talk about you and your band, so why don't you give yourself a plug and a shout out?
I feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, then, that's all the time we have for...
Oh, no, wait, hold on.
Oh, sorry. Did you actually want to... Okay.
I was just trying to fake humble first. Come on. Yeah, go to the volumeremote.com if you want, or anywhere else. It's free at the website. You got to pay everywhere else, but, the pay thing is a tip jar, I guess. It's my upside down busker hat. But yeah, just go to Bandcamp. Just get it for free. It doesn't matter. And it's fine. Maybe. Give it a pity listen. Check out Lucas's stuff first. All right. And don't do a murder.